Hello class, today we'll be talking about 10.2 ellipses. So we're going to look at the equations and the graphs of ellipses, and we're going to look at the translated ellipses. Now, an ellipse is the set of all points in a plane, the sum of whose distance from the two fixed points is a constant. Each fixed point is called the focus, or plural, foci, of the ellipse. So it's basically, with parabolas, we had a focus point. Now we're going to have what? Foci point, because it's what? Plural, it's more than one, it's two. All right? So we're going to look at this. So in a standard ellipse of equation in a standard form for an ellipse, the ellipse with center origin, which is 0, 0, an equation x squared over a squared plus y squared over b squared is equal to 1, where a is greater than b. So that you have to make sure, note that you understand that. Where a is greater than b. All right? It says, has vertices plus or minus a, 0, endpoints of minor axis is 0 plus or minus b, and the foci is plus or minus c, where c squared is equal to a squared minus b squared. So if you need to find the foci points, you do what? C squared is equal to a squared plus minus b squared. Now, to find it, all you got to do is do what? Square root. It's basically be c is equal to the square root of what? A squared minus b squared. Now, if you look, keep in mind, this is what? Your major axis is what? Your x-axis on this type of graph, because what? A is what? So A is what? Greater than B. Now, so keep that in mind. Since A is greater than B, your major axis should be on what? The x-axis. Now, let's look at this, with it's centered at the origin, and let's look. So, x squared over b squared plus y squared over a squared. Now, a squared is over what? A squared is under the y, so it's going to be what? The y-axis is now going to be your major axis. All right? So, follow the a. So, a is still greater than what? B. So that's how you can figure out which one is which, because look to see which one is greater than whatever. So you got x squared over b squared plus y squared over a squared is equal to 1. It says has vertices 0 plus or minus a, then have endpoints of the minor axis is plus or minus b 0, and then have foci point of 0 plus or minus c, where c squared is equal to what? A squared minus b squared. So that did not change. So your major axis this time is the y-axis. And your minor axis is the what? X-axis. So let's look at a question. So it says, graph each ellipse and find the coordinates of the foci and give the domain. So let's look at something. All right. Now, they gave us what? They gave us 4x squared plus 9y squared is equal to 36. Now, we have to put this in our standard form. So now I'm going to take 36, all right, and multiply and divide it out throughout this whole thing. All right. So basically I'm actually multiply this thing by what? 1 over 36. Because we're trying to get rid of the what? Numerator. So basically, and I'm going to write this all out. So I got 4x squared over Let me make that 2 smaller so you won't think it's 4x squared over 36 plus 9y squared over 36. And this is equal to 36 over 36. Now, when I reduce this, this is x squared over 9 plus y squared over 4. And this is just equal to 1. Now we have it in that standard form. Now we can actually go ahead and write out what our points look like. Now, is this going to be a horizontal or a vertical one? Now, which one has the biggest number? Remember, A has to be what? A is greater than B. So A has to be the greater one. Now, remember these are A squared and B squared, but still, if the number's bigger, then the square root of it should be bigger. So therefore, if we were to look, we have basically A squared is 9 and B squared is 4. So therefore, our major axis should be what? The x-axis. And our minor axis should be the y-axis. So, if we were trying to find our foci point, all right, it'll be what? C squared is equal to 9 minus 4. So C is equal to the square root of 5. Right? So keep that in mind. So therefore, the foci would be what? Negative square root of 5, 0, and square root of 5, 0. Now, if you notice, they put it as plus or minus or whatever else. You could. What about my x-intercepts or my vertices? So, if we were to write it out, it would be what? Negative 3, 0, and what? 3, 0. These are the vertices on the major axis. What else do we need? Let's go back and look. Now we can do the minor axis, all right? So we'll do the minor axis. All right, should get what? 0, 2, and 0, negative 2. So my domain would just be what? From negative 3 to positive 3. Our range would be what? From negative 2 to positive 2. It's an ellipse, it's a circle, so it has a starting point and a stopping point. It actually has an interval. And remember, they both included because what? They're part of the circle unless it has some open circles. Since they're closed, in which we include them because they work, we can make sure we write that there. All right? Now let's look at what the actual graph looks like. So, as we found that this point right here was what? 0, 2. This point here was 0, negative 2. This point was what? 3, 0. Then we have this point right here, which is what? Negative 3, 0. They already wrote your focus point, your 2 foci point. So just keep that in mind. So to actually get credit for drawing this, you got to make sure you put all the points that you had to find. Now, if it's something up here that you don't recognize or you get confused about, let me know. Let's look at this one. Now, first we have to do what? Rearrange some things. So therefore, we have 4x squared plus y squared is equal to 64. All I did is add the y squared to the other side. Now I'm going to multiply this by 1 over 64. Because remember, we want this other number to be 1 as well. If you wondered why I use that. So when we multiply, we will get what? 4x squared all over 64 plus y squared over 64 is equal to 64 over 64. Then we will reduce everything. So this is going to be x squared over what? 16 plus y squared over 64, which is equal to 1. And let me make sure this looks like a 2. All right. So now we know that this is going to be a vertical ellipse because of the fact that the a is under what? Y squared. So your a squared is equal to 64. Your b squared is equal to 16. All right. So to find c, it'll be c is equal to the square root of 64 minus 16. So c is equal to the square root of what? 48. And then you can actually what? Reduce this to what? 4 times the square root of 3. Now, remember what you did, all right? Now, if you're trying to figure out how you figured out the square root of 48, I'm gonna write it over here to the side. So we got 48. Then we can say we got what? 16 times 3. Then is the square root of 16 times the square root of 3. Then the square root of 16 is 4. So it's 4 times the square root of 3. That's how we got 4 times the square root of 3. All right? And this is just what? Side work. All right. Now, since we know that it is vertical, all right, that means my A is going to be what? So my foci, I'm going to go ahead and do my foci point. It's going to be, now, remember this is plus or minus. All right. Now, the foci point follows where the vertices is going to be. All right. So we know that we're going to have what? 0, negative 4 times the square root of 3. Then we have 0, positive 4 times the square root of 3. Then for our vertices, now the vertices, so we're talking about for the major axis, it's going to be what? 0 minus 8. Then we have 0, 8. All right. Now let's keep looking. Now let's look at what the minor axis. So we have what? 4 or negative 4, 0, and we have 4, 0. Now, when we look at domain, all right, we look at the x value still. So it'll be what? Bracket, negative 4 to 4. And then when we look at range, we look at the y's. And it'd be negative 8 to what? 8. All right, make sure if you have any questions about this, you hit me up through Microsoft Teams or send me an email because I want to make sure you understand what you're doing. So let's look at the graph of this thing. So you got to understand, what we found was the points that we're going to plot. All right? The vertices, the minor axis, and the foci point. We plot all those points. So, like we got, see, here would be what? This would be your 8, 0. Oh, 0, 8, sorry. This is 0, 8. This one right here would be what? Your negative, your 0, negative 8. This right here would be your 4, 0. This one right here would be your negative 4, 0. All right? So just make sure when you're doing these, and they already did your foci point. All right? So make sure when you're doing these, you understand exactly what you're plotting. Then you just connect it together. Just like the circles. And you remember you learned how to do circles in 171. So let's look at something. It said write the equation of the ellipse having a center at the origin and foci point of 0, 3 and 0, -3. It says in a major axis of 8 units. Oh, now it gives us a few things, right? It tells us what? They give us C. They usually don't give us C, right? So the thing about it is we know that this is a what? It's an ellipse. So it's symmetric, right? So all you gotta do is do what? Cut the distance in half, the length in half. So we have 2A is equal to 8. Because it says the major axis is what? Length 8 units. Now, so if it's length 8 units, we know that this thing is symmetric. All we gotta do is cut it in half, and we can find what A is. So A is equal to 4. So therefore, we have what? We gotta do C squared is equal to what? A squared minus B squared. But we already know what C is, which is what? 3, right? So, but if we know what C is, so it's 3 squared is equal to what? 4 squared minus what? B squared. All right? Therefore, I have what? 9 is equal to 16 minus B squared. All right. So therefore, I'm going to just solve this out. So it's going to be 9 minus 16 is equal to negative B squared. Then I'm going to get what? This will give me what? Negative 7 is equal to negative B squared. So I'm going to go ahead and move these around. So I got B squared is equal to 7. So B is equal to plus or minus the square root of 7. All right? Yeah, so B is 7. B squared is what? Plus or minus the square root of 7. All right. So we know that A squared would just be what? 16. So we're going to use this, right? So we got X squared. Now, the thing is, it's funny, plus Y squared. Now, we have to actually look at something. We have to figure out where it goes. But now we really do know where it goes because what? Our foci point shows us what type of graph it is. Since the foci point are on the y-axis, then that means our major axis is the y-axis. And since our major axis is the y-axis, that means the higher number would be under the y. So y will have what under it? 16. Or have your A under it. And then this one will have 7. So it'll be y squared it'll be x squared over 7 plus y squared over 16 is equal to 1. Let's look at the graph to it. So the domain would be what? From negative square root of 7 to 7, the square root of 7. Then the range would be what? From negative 4 to 4. Remember, it's included, so we use brackets. Make sure if you have any questions about this, you send me an email. So let's just go through this one. So let's just say if I gave you y is equal y over 4 is equal to the square root of what? 1 minus the x squared over 25. Now, really have to pay attention to this. All right? Because think about it. You have to keep in mind that all we're getting here is what? The positive case to it, not the negative case. If you notice that square root is not plus or minus. All it wants, this is going to be a half ellipse. This is going to be a half ellipse. So now it shows you a couple of ways you can write it. Now, if you see it says what? If we were to square both sides, we'll get y squared over what? 16. Minus is equal to 1 minus x squared over 25. Or you will get x squared over 25 plus y squared over 16 is equal to 1. And it says the ellipse x-intercept is going to be plus or minus 5, and the y-intercept is going to be what? 0 plus or minus 4. Now, when you do this, you got to understand something. Since there is not a plus or minus, you're only drawing half of the graph. All right? The only reason they wrote it this way is so you can figure out where the vertices are. All right? Where the vertices are. Now, we know that what? 25 is greater than what? 16. So we know that the major axis is on the what? X-axis. Now, since it's positive, that means that what? All our y terms will be what? Positive. All right? So we only going to have the upper half. All right? Because think about it. This is the same as you put in the calculator. Y is equal to what? 4 times the square root of 1 minus x squared over 25. Right? Because all you do is you multiply that 4 to the other side, and all you got to do is go ahead and plug in what you got to plug in. All right? So it's the same case. So let's look at this half ellipse. So this half ellipse, it does what? It goes here. And it makes itself around. Now, you don't put the bottom half because what? It's a half ellipse because it didn't give you the negative case for y's. So when you did the domain should be what? From -5. So domain. It should be what? From -5 to what? 5. Then my range should only be from what? The origin, which is 0, 0. So my range should be from what? 0 to what? 4. Because what? We have this point here, then we go up to that point. All right, so 0 to 4. All right, make sure if you have any questions about this. This is something that you could put right in the calculator once you put it in the correct order. So let's look at this. Standard form for ellipses with center HK. Now, it says the ellipse is centered at HK. Either horizontal or vertical major axis of length 2A satisfies one of the following equations, where A is greater than B, which is greater than 0, all right? And C squared is equal to what? A squared minus B squared, where C is greater than 0. So we have what? We have X minus H squared all over A squared plus Y minus K squared over B squared is equal to 1. So it's very similar to what you just had, but you have some shifts. Now, this is the change. The major axis, the horizontal, the foci point would be what? H plus or minus C, K. Then you have the vertices would be H plus or minus A, K. So keep that in mind. Because that means it did what? It shift what? It's the shift, right? If you shift to the left or the right, that means that what? You're dealing with what? The x's. So that's why we're shifting the x points. And the foci point moves just as much as the what? X term move, the vertices move. So let's look at this same case, but let's look at it with vertical. With a vertical major axis. So let's look at what we got. Now, everything reads the same until you get to the actual major axis. We get to the formula. So this is x minus h squared over b squared. So the same concept of having a and b, a being where axis, where the major axis would be. Then you're going to have y minus k squared all over a squared is equal to 1. Now, if you look at now the major axis, vertical and foci, all right, the major axis is vertical, and it says the foci is h, so you write whatever what h is, and then you got what? K plus or minus c. Then you got what? H for the vertices is h, then we got k plus or minus a. So it's talking about that vertical shift. So it's either go up or it goes what? Down. All right? So let's look at it. Let's look at this one. All right. So let's write what we have. So we know what's the center. So my center should be what? 2, -1. That's my center. All right? Because remember, it was y minus k. Since it's plus here, you have to do what? Y minus a -1. All right? And that's going to be your h, or your k. All right? So let's look. Now, we're looking at these two numbers. We know that what? A squared is equal to 16, and b squared is equal to 9. All right? Now, we always got to make sure. Now, our major axis is vertical because the bigger number on the bottom shows you where your vertical axis is at. Now, when we look at, now let's actually find C for the foci point. So we got C is equal to the square root of 16 minus 9. So C is just equal to the square root of 7. Now, it's plus or minus this, of course. Now, remember, we have to do what? This is going to be, we have to do what? Subtract C and add C from your what? Okay. So foci will be 0. It won't be 0. Give me 1 second. You keep your H's. So it'll be what? 2. Then we got -1 plus the square root of 7. Then we have, for my other foci, we got 2. Then we got -1 minus the square root of 7 for foci points. Now, if you get lost, let me know. All right? It's easy as just asking what happened. All right? Now, we haven't found vertices yet, but we are. Right? All right? To find the vertices, we add K to what? A. All right? So to find the vertices, and I'm going to write this out. So it'll still be what? It'll be 2. Then we have what? -1 plus 4. Then we have what? 2 -1 minus 4. All right? So therefore, our vertices would be what? 2, 3, and 2, -5. All right. So remember, it's what? It's K plus or minus what? A, right? So it's K plus A and K minus A. All right? If you forget that, just go back to your notes before you can check it out. Any questions? All right? If you got any questions, make sure you hit me up, Microsoft Team, as soon as you see your question. Now, we want to make sure we got everything. Now, we have, you got your major axis, you have your minor axis. So, now, let's actually find your B's, right? Let's find your minor axis so you can get those. So now, you got to be smart with this. So, the same case. So it'll be what? It'll be your H, right? Right? It'll be your H minus what? So we got H, which is 2, minus your what? Minus your B, which is 3. And then we just keep our what? B. I mean, we keep our center or our K. All right? Then we have to do the other one. Now we got what? We have 2 minus, well, 2 plus, sorry. 2 plus 3, and then keep our -1, right? So when we write this, this is just going to be what? -1, -1, and this one's going to be 5, -1. That's your one for your, now, the way that I did that, I just took the center, so I got what? H, then plus or minus B, and then we keep our K. All right? And then this one, you know, this was the H here. All right? So keep that in mind. You got to pay attention to those little things. And now let's look at the actual graph of this. So we have our foci point. We have our vertices. Make sure everything correct. All right? We have our middle point, which is our center. All right? We got everything. Now your domain goes from -1 to what? +5, right? And our range goes from -5 all the way up to 3. All right? So keep that in mind. Now, this is just a definition, and then we're done with this. It says a conic is a set of all points, piece of xy, in a plane such that the ratio of the distance from P to a fixed point and the distance from P to a fixed line is constant. So basically, this is just give you a definition of a conic or however you want to say it. All right. Now, as you know, we're going to do what? We're going to keep going into 10.3. So make sure you look for 10.3 in the next section.